Welcome to Handstand for Beginners. Today I'm going to take you through the basics for learning how to handstand. We're going to go through some floor drills, we're going to go through the mobility, and we're going to go through the wall drills that I use with all my clients and have done for a number of years now. And these are really the foundations, the building blocks of your handstand practice. Now, learning to handstand is a very easy concept, but it's actually really tricky, especially learning it as an adult. We can have challenges with mobility, we can be nervous about going upside down, we can be lacking some strength and conditioning, and we can be lacking in the knowledge of the correct drills to be doing for your particular level. So in this video, we're going to fill all those gaps, give you the information you need to do to build your practice to become strong and not only handstands against the wall, but starting to get away from the wall and learning that a magical freestanding position. So let's first look at the simple concept of learning the handstand. So we make the body one segment, stack it on top of the hands, and then hold it there. Now, in this position, I can fall in two directions. I can go in this direction, back to my feet, so the under balance, or I could move towards my over balance, which is falling in that direction towards my back. So if I can strengthen my over balance and I can strengthen my under balance to the point to my balance window becomes very big, and I can move this way and I can move this way, I'm always going to be able to hold a handstand. Now, the reason I can jump into handstand in any direction, make my body really fancy in different shapes, move it around, is because I've made my balance window very, very big. When you're first learning to handstand, your balance window is tiny. It's like trying to balance something on a knife edge. So we need to learn how to control and strengthen that under balance, over balance, and also make the body one segment. The reason I can put this on the end of my hand and balance it there is because the pole, the handstand cane, stays as one piece, one segment. It's simple. Our body doesn't act like that. We've got hips that move around, we have shoulders that move around, we have arms that bend, we have knees that bend. So what we want to first learn is how do we create the one segment piece that's going to make it easier to handstand. It doesn't mean you have to be a dead straight arrow. I can still balance the handstand like this, but my position is rigid, like a fixed thing, like a fixed segment that I can balance and pull around using my hands, elbows, and shoulders. What we don't want is this wet noodle wobbling around and trying to balance that. So our warm up for our handstand training needs to be about getting the body ready in the best possible position, the easiest position to stack, and also try and get rid of the kinks in the body. So the places where the body starts to fold and close. So the most common places is the hips, we get too stuck in this position, and our shoulders, we get too stuck in this position. So when we try and take our hands above our head towards that handstand position, our hips compensate, then we try and correct to the hips, and our shoulders compensate again. So we have this movement that looks like this, and that makes the handstand very inefficient, hard to hold, hard to balance, and it's harder to get that one segment. So let's do a warm up now that's going to open the body up as best as we can, and over time that's going to get easier and easier to create that longer, straighter line that's easier to stack. So let's first attack the hips. So we can first concentrate on the quadriceps, the hip flexors, the one that closes the hip position. Now I'm going to use the wall for this one. If you need to, put a cushion or something underneath your knee because it can be quite intense on the knee itself. I'm going to go into a lunge position. So I can either have my foot there or I can turn it over to that position if you're a little bit closer to the wall. I'm going to bring the front foot forwards into a lunge position and make sure I can fully open the hip there. What we don't want to do is have a hip that's closed there. I want to be able to open in that position. So if I can fully open there and I don't feel that much stretch through the quad, through that thigh muscle, I can move back closer to the wall. So closer in this direction with the goal of getting very close to the wall and even moving the foot to the side and bringing the butt towards the wall, trying to keep into a posterior tilt, so tucking the tail under in that position. If you're the opposite and you struggle in this position to hold there and it looks more like this, then we need to move further away from the wall. We can turn the foot over, come further away, and then get that upright hip position there. So I have no hip crease. I'm open into that position. I feel this stretch in the quad there. Now, if I want to move the stretch a little bit higher up, right into that hip flexor, I can move the front foot further away and then push the hip forwards. But same thing, I should be feeling it all down the front here, not in the low back, and I should have a nice upright torso position because we want to try and open the hip up for handstands. Now I can tie in the upper body as well by lifting that same side arm up in the air, but just be careful when you do that it doesn't change this position because this is the focus for this stretch. Now I recommend you hold for around 30 to 60 seconds per side, depending on how tight you are, and then swap legs and do the same on the other side. Next, let's look at the upper back. So we tend to be stuck in this rounded hunch position. It's hard to take our hands above our head. So we need to open that up as much as possible for our handstand position. So I'm going to use a foam roller. So in this position, I'm going to put the foam roller mid back, so mid thoracic, so more where your ribs are. So if you think of where your ribs are, somewhere in the middle there. If you're a female, where your bra strap is, that's roughly where the roller should start off. And then in that position, I'm just going to have an explore. I'm going to see how much I can open and then how much I can close. Now what you want to feel here is that you're opening over the roller, you're not arching your low back, and you're not over arching through the neck. So I'm not compensating the neck, I'm not compensating the low back. So we just want to go into as much extension as we can and come back again. Now if that's easy, I can do the same thing with the arms above the head, trying to keep the biceps closer to the ears, open and closing, trying to hold onto that pelvis, don't let the low back arch. I can also roll over that area. I can be a bit more targeted, so open and close, and try and move all the way up and down, going through each of the ribs, or where your segments of your spine are. Finding the tighter bits. If you find a tight bit, then just do more repetitions, and again, roller in that position. Now this one, personally, has made a massive difference to my handstand position. I was really stuck in that thoracic position from lots of not so good posture and lots of weight training, things like bench press that really closed the shoulders. So having more of an open position there is much easier for function in general, but definitely much easier for handstands. Next, I'm going to look at the hamstrings. We're also going to include the spine with this one. So I'm just going to stand with soft knees. And I'm now going to first focus on the top of the spine and slowly go through the spine all the way down, and then pull in the hamstrings and calves. It will make sense as we do it. So softer knees. I'm first going to take the chin to the chest. Then I'm going to roll through the upper back, through the mid back, then start to get through the low back as I come down, so trying to hunch over. The idea is you're trying to move one segment at a time, bit by bit, rolling through it. You'll probably find that you have chunks of spine that moves together. Now once I get to the point where I've got through my low back, I'm going to lock the knees backwards and then continue the movement as far as I can. Now if you're flexible and can get down to the floor already, you can just drape the arms on the floor in that position. You'll get a good stretch in the calves and the hamstrings, and then bend the knees and roll back up again. So bit by bit through the spine, nice and tall, and then I would do that again. So chin to chest, roll down through the upper back, mid back, low back, lock the knees backwards, and go as deep as you can. Now if you are someone that's a bit more flexible there, you could stand on a step. So something like the IKEA step is really good. Exactly the same movement. So I roll through the spine, soft knees, lock the knees backwards. Now I drape as far down as I can. Now this, once you've got a certain amount of flexibility, it turns into a low back stretch as well. So I'm locking the knees backwards, stretching the low back in that position, bend the knees to come back out again. So that's a great stretch, unless you're super, super tight in the hamstrings. Now, if you are super tight in the hamstrings, we first want to focus on getting 90 degrees at the hip. So what does that mean? Can I bring the leg up into that position, 90 degrees? Can I go to 90 degrees there with a flat back? If you can't, we need to work on the hamstrings individually and slowly get to that point. So we can use something like this rack to put our foot up on, or you could use a door frame. So I'm going to go in this position. This other leg that I'm not stretching is going to go straight. This leg goes up here. Now if my low back is pushed into the floor, my butt's coming off the floor and it's rounding me up like this because I'm still too tight in that hamstring, I just move back further away until I get the point where I can still feel my hamstring stretch, but my back is flat on the floor, and then I stay in there, and then I just keep moving until I can get all the way in to that point where I'm now at 90 degrees at the hip, got a straight leg, and my spine is straight. Now, if you have somewhere to hang, that's a great opportunity to really lengthen the body, open the body up into one segment, and it covers lots of different muscles and joints at the same time. So I definitely recommend hanging, hands shoulder width apart, and then just drape as far down as you can. If you're like me here and I can't hang all the way without touching the floor, I'm just going to bend the knees up slightly. Ideally, you would hang somewhere where you can straighten fully, but this is really good just for the shoulders, for the upper back, for the spine, If it's hard, just have the hands a little bit further away. Start with a shorter time, but slowly work up to around 60 seconds, passively hanging. Next, let's look at warming up the wrists and the hands and the fingers. So handstand hands, I'm gonna place my hands down on the floor. So now what I mean by handstand hands is I'm gonna spread the fingers as much as I can, make big base of support. I'm gonna place them down on the floor, roughly shoulder width apart. I'm gonna position myself so my shoulders are directly on top of my hands like that, and my arms are locked out. Now if you find you're in this position and you can't straighten the arms all the way, just take the hands a little bit wider, turn them out a little bit more, and see if you can get to a point where your arms are dead straight. But the goal would be to get your hands underneath your shoulders in that position. Then I'm going to do some circles, keeping the arms as dead straight as possible. Slowly make the circle bigger. So I'm exploring my wrists, my fingers, my palms, see how that feels. Check you're not bending the arms as you go wider with the circle. And then change direction, exactly the same thing. Then we can peel the hands up and down, different directions. So when I peel the hands up and down different directions, I'm trying to get through the fingers, through the knuckles, through the palms, in all the different directions. So again, I'm focusing on areas that are tighter and I'll spend more time there. Okay, then I'm going to have a look at my shoulders. So we want to get the shoulders to open up nicely above our head. So I'm going to position myself so my hip is on top of my knees, my toes are pushed into the floor, and then I'm just going to slowly walk the hands out. So I'm going to find out how far I can go in this position. So you can see that my hands are raising above my head as I take the hands further and further away. Then I'm going to go up onto fingertips. So the fingertips is going to make my shoulders and my chest work a little bit harder to stay there. So making sure that hip is still on top of the knees. And then I'm going to tuck my tail under. So I'm going to go into a bit of a posterior tilt. We don't want to arch the low back with this stretch. And then all I'm going to do is just slowly take the chest down towards the floor. Ideally looking at the fingers as long as that doesn't hurt the neck. And then come back out again. You might need to reposition because you might have let the pelvis go, or you might have bent the elbows slightly, and then you could do that again. Now I would roughly hold that for about 30 seconds, but it's very hard to give you exact numbers without assessing you as an individual first, because some people just need to hold for longer time, some people need to start with shorter times, some people might not even need to stretch hardly at all with that one if they're very open in that position already. So it is very individual in terms of how long you should be holding stretches for. Next we can start thinking about the body line position. Now there's two main ways you can start to look at the body line position just using the floor. So laying on your back and laying on your front. The idea here is that we want to try and make the body as long as possible, but still keep it one segment. Now one segment could still be like this because everything's still connected and acting as one, or it could be straight all the way out and be like that. So both of these positions is one segment. Obviously this one is way more demanding than this one. So we just need to work out where you can hold for time. Now I'd hold this one for a minimum of 30 seconds, ideally going up to around 60 seconds, because it's not a strength position, it's a conditioning position. We want you to be able to hold a handstand, freestanding for 60 seconds eventually, 60 seconds against the wall. It's just a good ballpark figure where you will still be able to breathe, hold a conversation, and then it becomes your base and you can add on other layers of the handstand on top of it. So grab hold of something. Now a yoga block is really good for this, or you could use a stick, because we just want to make sure that our hands don't go too wide, and we police that position by holding something between our hands. So I'm going to lay on my back, I'm going to bend my knees, so that makes it nice and easy to have my low back touching the floor. What we don't want to have is a big gap underneath our low back there. So I'm going to straighten the arms, hold onto the yoga block in that position, and then all I'm going to do is start to straighten the legs as far as I can without the low back coming off the floor. Now when I get to this position here where I'm about 90 degrees at the hips, 90 degrees at the knees, I'm going to start to add in the arms as well. So as the legs go out, the arms are going out as well. I'm just going to find a position where I can hold for that 30 seconds, 45 seconds, even 60 seconds if I have it. Now if it starts to get too hard when I'm holding it and I feel like my low back is going to come off, I could bring everything back in. So bend the knees a little bit and hold there. So on the fly, depending on how I feel, I can move the legs in or out and the arms in or out. But that goal is to stay as that one segment for as long as possible with the low back pushed against the floor. Next, let's look at the body line drill laying on the front. So this one, we just need to lay down on the floor. Same as before, we're going to try and reach out as far as we can in front of ourselves and as far as we can behind ourselves. So I'm trying to reach as far as I can with my toes, trying to reach as far as I can with my hands. I'm going to have my chin on the floor and I'm going to be looking at the yoga block. So I'm still using the block to give me that distance between my hands, and I'm holding that position. So this is the maximum distance I can get between my hands and my feet. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the posterior tilt. So what we don't want to do is arch the back here and stick the butt up in the air. I want to do the opposite. I want to turn the glutes on, turn the abs on just enough so I can get my belly button to come off the floor. So I've got a gap underneath my belly button there. My chin is on the floor, and then I'm going to hold that position. So this position, see if you can get to that 30 seconds again. If it feels too hard, you could take your hands a little bit wider. You could relax the legs a little bit more out to the side, but try and keep that belly button up off the floor for at least the 30-second time. Once we've done the line drills on the floor, we can start to think about loading the body weight onto our hands and our shoulders and start to condition us for taking all of our weight into that handstand position. So a great exercise to start with is the crow pose or the frog pose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my hands turned out to the side. I'm going to put my elbows in the inside of my knees. Now, I personally find that easier. Some people prefer to have their knees on top of their elbows. It doesn't really matter. What we're trying to do is just load as much weight as we can to the hands and shoulders and create a balanced position. So I place the hands down on the floor. I'm putting my knees on the outside of the elbows. My hands are a little bit wider than my shoulder and my hands are turned out. I'm going to start to move forward. So notice my shoulders and my head is moving forwards. My hips is raising, but not too high. And then I have light toes. So that's the goal to start with, is just see if you can get into a position where you have light toes and you can still hold a conversation there. Then I can lift one leg up in the air. If I have it, I can lift both feet off the floor and then hold that position. So there's our basic frog position or crow position. And then I'm going to do the opposite to get back down with control. Now we can build upon that, we can start moving in and out of the position, we can change the shape. There's lots of progressions to the crow. But I would just use it as a quick way just to check you can put all of your weight into your hands, your shoulders, and show some sort of balance there. If you need to, still keep those toes on the floor. And if you struggle with that one, that's a good one to start to work on nearly on a daily basis, and you'll quickly learn how to get into the correct position. And definitely video yourself from the side. And that goes with majority of these drills. If you video from the side and look at what you're doing, you can easily self-assess, because if you look like this, it makes sense why you're heavy to your feet. You can see that the head and shoulders needs to come down. Now that makes more sense looking at it from the side visually, that I can lift the feet up. And that's the same with all the drills. You'll get a lot of feedback just by videoing from the side. Instead of thinking what you're doing, you can see what you're doing. Now we can start to look at the conditioning drills, the body line drills, but up against the wall. So now I'm going to take more of my weight into my hands and start to walk the feet up. Now there's a few variations of this one depending on how close we go to the wall. First of all, we just need to make sure that we can safely go into this position, step up onto the wall, and step back down again with control. We always need to leave enough energy to get back out again. Once we're comfortable with that, we can start to move our hands a little bit closer towards the wall. So I can go up to the wall there, and then I can lift and move closer to the wall. Now if you don't feel comfortable with that yet, if you're not comfortable to move the hands up and down, just stay in this position and keep the hips there. What we don't want to be in is this position. So we don't want to be sagging towards the wall. We want to feel more positive in that position and not be collapsing. We should feel strong, and again we should leave enough energy to be able to get out of that position. Now over time we can start to move closer and closer to the wall. We can point the toes, we can tuck the towel under, and then we can hold that position with the goal of moving all the way up to 60 seconds there, and then showing enough control to come back down, leaving enough energy to do that, and step back out the way we went up. Now that's going to take a little bit of time to build that conditioning, but it's a good goal to get to move all the way into the wall and to hold for the 60 seconds. Just make sure when you get close to the wall that nothing else is touching the wall, it's just the toes. We don't want to start to sag the body into it. It's a bit like holding a plank position. We want to be a bit more like this. We don't want to be collapsed like this. Now if you're nervous or don't feel strong enough to go up onto the wall like that yet, you could use the sofa, a chair or box, or just put your feet
up onto the box in that position, stack the shoulders on top of the hands and stay there for your time. You could even lift the leg up and back down again. But this is just conditioning the body, starting to make it feel safe to be in that position, and then slowly build some conditioning and strength there until you can get up to the wall in that chest to wall position. Next, we can look at the kick up to the wall. So we need to make a very, very strong base that we feel confident with, and then we just kick the hips and the legs on top. Hands shoulder width apart, slightly turned out. And then I'm going to pick a focal point somewhere between my index fingers. Now that focal point is something where I need to keep looking at, not only during the kick up, but when I'm into handstand as well. What we don't want to have is a focal point and shoulders and elbows and the body that moves around all over the place every time we try and do a kick up. We want to solidify and make that base very, very strong, and then kick the hips on top of that strong base and have it consistent. So when we're trying to get a consistent kiss of the wall, when we go up and kiss our feet to it, there isn't things changing around underneath. So hands shoulder width apart or slightly wider, hands turned out, pick the focal point on the floor, up onto our feet in this position, and now I'm pushing the floor away. So I'm holding that position there, the shoulders aren't moving. I'm just gonna do a little kick and come back down again. So I'm getting some power from this straight leg, I'm getting some power from this bent leg to take me up towards the handstand and back down again. Now notice the shoulders are staying in position. Now if this does happen, I just need to make sure before I kick again that I replace the shoulders and put them back to where they were, pick that focal point again, make that strong base, and then kick again. Now the first goal is to get this leg, this top leg, to touch the wall. So I'm gonna try and kick this foot up, kiss the wall, missed it, need a little bit more power, make sure the base is correct, kiss, come back down again. Now once I can get that with control and I'm keeping the base nice and strong, I'm just gonna get the foot to touch a little bit higher and then slowly make that higher and higher. And as I do that, notice what's happening with that second leg. My second leg is moving up to the point where I'm nearly holding in that handstand position. So the final movement is to bring that second leg to join the first leg, hold, show control, and then come down in the reverse of the same movement. Now we want to try and get that for repetitions and get to the point where we can just kick up nicely to the wall. Now if that is easy for you already and you can go comfortably for the wall, really try and get to a light touch on the wall. We don't want to be smashing into the wall, because obviously when we go freestanding, that just means you're going to fly over in the handstand and land on your back. We want to be kissing the wall very, very lightly and have a lot of control. Now once we've got that control and we can lightly touch the wall, then all we're going to do is do the same thing, but touch the wall with both feet at the same time. So hands, shoulders, focal point, kick, both legs will come together and kiss the wall. That wasn't a great one for me. Let's do another one. So both legs come together, kiss the wall at the same time, very, very lightly. Reverse it back down with control. Now that is going to take most people quite a long time to really fine tune that, but it's super important to get a nice clean kick up for when we start moving away from the wall. Now once we've unlocked it and we're kicking up to the wall, so we've got back to wall and we're in that position, we can start thinking about our balance drills. So how do we start working the heel pull, which is how we pull away from the wall, and training the overbalance, so when I fall towards my back. And then in a minute I'll go through the other way around, so we're going to go chest to wall and pull away from the wall using our shoulders, which is how we control the underbalance. But let's first focus on the overbalance. So I'm going to kick to the wall with that same technique, hands, shoulders on top, focal point, make sure I kiss the wall. Now I'm in this position, make the body one piece, and I'm just going to push through the fingers and watch what happens to the heels. See, the heels came off. So I done that movement with my fingers. So that's how I'm going to control a subtle movement towards overbalance. So we can do exactly the same thing on our toes, and that will make much more sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my head against the wall. And now instead of pushing through the fingers, I'm going to push through my toes and watch what happens to my head. See, I can come off the wall and then I can slowly go back again using the control of the weight or the energy I'm putting into my toes. Now this only works if I have a good connection between my feet and my head. If I lose that connection, so that's that one segment, if I lose that connection by doing this, notice the head doesn't come off anymore. So I'm pushing my hips away, but my head stays on the wall. So the same thing needs to happen in the handstand. We need to create that one segment. I push through the fingers,
and the toes come off the wall.
So we can practice that again now with that knowledge. Kick up, kiss the wall, push through the fingers till the heels come off the wall. Relax the fingers, I can go back again. Now notice I can do this for repetitions. I can hold in the handstand and go back. In reality, that's not going to happen to start with.
You're going to fall down a lot. So you're going to pull away from the wall. But what we've got to be careful of is when we're doing that, it can be good repetitions. We've just got to make sure we're not pushing off the wall. So what we shouldn't see is this. We shouldn't see a step off the wall. So if that is happening, if I'm pushing with this left leg to push my right foot off and push myself down, it's a bit false because when we freestand, we don't have the wall there to push off of. So that's not teaching myself good habits in terms of rebalancing the handstand. So we want to make sure that both feet come off the wall at the same time. If you struggle with that, you could put something between your feet or get someone else to put something between your feet. So something soft where you squeeze your legs together on that thing, and then that makes it easier to pull away from the wall. Once we have a bit more control with that drill and we can pull off easily, we just want to see if we can stop ourselves before we go too far. Relax the fingers and go back again. So pull off, hold for a few seconds, relax the fingers, go back, pull off, hold for a few seconds, relax the fingers, go back. Now again, that's a tricky drill. It's going to take time to get that sort of control. You're going to do a lot of falling around, but think every time you come back down, you get to practice your kick up again. Now the next level up is the toe pull. So that's how we start to learn how we balance the underbalance. So the underbalance is where if I don't kick up strong enough, I'm now in my underbalance there. You see I'm holding and I come back down again. Now the reason I can hold there is because my shoulders have come forwards of my hands and are counterbalancing me. So that's how we control that movement towards underbalance in and out. Now this takes a long time to get the ability to do in a freestand handstand. So to be able to go towards underbalance, so underbalance over there and then go back to handstand again. So I'm moving in and out of underbalance now by planching the shoulders forwards. Now, you don't need to do that in such a big movement to start with, but we just want to do it a little bit so we can pull ourselves from the wall. Now, there is a bit of a learning curve here. There's a little bit of a prerequisite as you need to have some control to bail out of the handstand if things go wrong and you start to go towards your back, or you have someone here to spot you. Because what's going to happen is we're going to go up chest to wall in this position, and then I'm going to use my shoulders to pull from the wall. So I'm in that one segment piece, I'm going to pull my shoulders away, my toes are sliding down the wall till they come off, and then I push back to the wall again. So shoulders come forwards, toes slide down, push back up again. So the temptation or the risk is that I go too far and then I come out. So if I don't know how to bail out of the handstand there, it can be a little bit dangerous. And in reality, most people are going to be so scared of that happening that when they try and pull from the wall, this is going to happen. So they pull from the wall there and then they sag back towards the wall because the wall's safe. So it does take a little bit of time to build up to this drill, but you need to know it because it's the next level that's going to definitely open up that balance window and it'll start to get you to hold freestanding away from the wall. So some of you might need to come back to this drill in a few weeks or months when you feel ready to do it. But the same things apply. You first pull away from the wall for repetition. So I pull away, push back towards the wall, pull away, push back towards the wall. Once you've got that, you start to hover in that area there and then go back to the wall. So I can do that for time, I could do that for repetitions, but again, it depends what level you're at and how much control you have. Then once you've got some understanding of both of those components, both the back to wall and the chest to wall drill, then we can kick back up to the wall again, kiss the wall lightly with the heels, pull away using the fingers, but now I can control the handstand with the shoulders and the fingers, and I start to get some hold time. And that's why I can then start to make the transition to doing some freestanding balance attempts, whether it's with a spotter or by yourself. Now, if you do feel ready to start playing with that toe pull drill, and if you're ready to even start having to play with some freestanding holds, just make sure you have a play around with that bail. So you can go where there's grass, you could go where there's sand, somewhere where you're not going to hurt yourself. You can practice against the wall, turning yourself out. So if I'm up against the wall here, I could practice taking that hand away, cartwheeling out in lots of different directions, and try and mimic what's going to happen if I go too far or I start to fall over in that direction. So that's the beginner's guide to learning to handstand. Now there's a lot of work there for some of you. You could be working on that for 12, 18 months. Just don't rush the process. Work at your pace. Aim firstly for consistency in your practice and slowly build up to a level that you can build upon. It's very common when I'm training people of a higher level, I have to pull them back to some of these drills we've been through today because they've got some gaps in their practice. So making sure that you have a strong heel pull, a strong toe pull, a strong line drill, and strong conditioning holds on top of that base you created with the flexibility is really important for the harder skills that you can go towards, whether it's handstand push-ups, press handstands, or that 60-second freestyle and hold. Reach out to me through the website if you have any questions or if you'd like to look at any individualized coaching, and enjoy the journey to your freestyle and handstand.